On May 26, 2005, President Bush held a press conference at the Rose Garden of the White House in Washington, D.C. President Bush was meeting with Palestinian Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas. During this press conference, President Bush made statements that appear by news analysts to be a radical departure from past U.S. foreign policy regarding the Middle East. Mr. Hal Lindsey, author and television host of The Intelligence Report, was apologetic as he began his program on June 8, 2005, where he outlined what is perceived to be a dangerous new position America was taking regarding the land issue in Israel. Mr. Joseph Farah, editor and founder of WorldNet Daily, an internet news service, filed an editorial June 15, 2005, titled Do-Over in the Middle East. According to both analysts, the Palestinian people have been handed all of the bargaining chips between Israel and the Palestinian Authority without any negotiations. In addition, Mr. Farah states that the Palestinians, quote, have not abided by a single requirement of previous agreements designed to achieve peace, end of quote. The statement by President Bush, which caused so much concern, is this:
any final status agreement must be reached between the two parties, and changes to the 1949 armistice lines must be mutually agreed to. A viable two-state solution must ensure contiguity of the West Bank, and a state of scattered territories will not work. There must also be meaningful linkages between the West Bank and Gaza. This is the position of the United States today. It will be the position of the United States at the time of final status negotiations.
The contention with these statements are twofold. One, it appears that President Bush is pushing the clock backwards and dismissing all of the negotiations between the 1949 armistice lines up to the present time, including the Six-Day War of 1967. Previous U.S. and international policy positions have always been based on the 1967 UN-mandated lines after the Israeli Six-Day War. In that war, Israel was attacked by several of its Arab neighbors simultaneously. Israel miraculously defeated these hostile attacks against much larger forces in only 6 days. At the time of the truce, Israel had gained the entire Sinai Peninsula. However, new lines were negotiated through international agreements and the UN. Secondly, President Bush's statement regarding a linkage between the West Bank and Gaza would effectively cut the already small and difficult-to-defend nation of Israel in two parts. From a political position, it appears President Bush is giving the Palestinians all they might have hoped for without any negotiations, and compromising the defense of Israel beyond what he states is considered reasonable for the Palestinians. In addition, President Bush is not fully supporting Israel in establishing a security fence to protect itself. This is very odd in light of the millions of dollars being spent in America at its seaports, airports, and cities to defend itself against only a minimal threat of terrorism compared to the years of wars and terrorism that has been documented in Israel. From a biblical perspective, the U.S. seems to be placing itself in a position of helping Israel's avowed enemies who have stated they will accept nothing less than the total destruction of Israel. The Bible clearly states that God has established the nation of Israel and will in the future personally rescue them as they are laid siege to by all of the nations of the world. After these nations attack Israel, God vows to punish these nations with severe consequences. The Old Testament and Tanakh prophet Zechariah spoke this, beginning in verse 1 of chapter 12. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretches forth the heavens, and lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about. when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all the people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And that's Zechariah 12, verses 1 through 3. And again Zechariah spoke, Behold, the day of the Lord comes, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall be removed toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, you shall flee like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with you. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel, in great abundance. And so shall be the plague of the horse, of the mule, of the camel, and of the ass, and of all the beasts that shall be in these tents, as this plague. Now this last prophecy from Zechariah chapter 14 is clearly a future prophecy that has not occurred. We need to consider whether it is prudent for the U.S. to bless the avowed enemies of Israel with obstacles for them to defend themselves. The Bible assures us that there will be no peace in the Middle East until Almighty God personally rescues Israel and restores its land. Is it prudent for the U.S. to embark on a course that will endanger its citizens by crossing the stated will of Almighty God? I hope and pray that President Bush will carefully consider his course of action and choose to be an advocate for Israel and not its adversary. I'm Dennis Featon with this news break from Metanoia Northwest. Thanks for being with us today.